The walls of Outpost Eridus shook again. Dust fell from the ceiling. Commander Tay gripped the edge of the command table and tried to stay calm. "How much time do we have?" he asked. Officer Jin looked up from her screen. Her blue skin was pale, with fear. "The outer shields are at 12%, maybe 2 hours if we're lucky." Tay nodded and looked at the map. The red dots of enemy ships surrounded their small green dot. There was no way out. The Void Hunters had found them, cut off their calls for help, and now waited to finish them off. "They're playing with us," said Lieutenant Sook. Her voice was quiet but angry. "They know we can't escape." The Void Hunters had appeared 1 year ago. No one knew where they came from. They looked like tall shadows with many arms moving faster than most eyes could follow. Their black ships were shaped like claws. They never spoke, never asked for surrender, and never left survivors. 3 star systems had already fallen to them. Now they had come to Eridus, the farthest outpost of the Galactic Alliance. "Any word from headquarters?" Tay asked. Communications Officer Han shook his head. "Nothing. The Void Hunters are blocking all signals. We are alone." The room fell silent. 23 people remained at the outpost. 23 lives that would soon end if they did nothing. Sook stepped forward. She was young for her rank, but brave. "Commander, there might be one option left." "I'm listening," Tay said. "The old texts in the library. They mention a species that once made the Void Hunters run away in fear." Jin looked up sharply. "You can't be serious." "What species?" Tay asked. Sook took a deep breath. "Humans." The room erupted with voices. "Humans are just stories. They died out thousands of years ago. We don't even know if they were real." Tay raised his hand, and everyone fell silent. "Explain, Lieutenant." Sook nodded. "According to the oldest records, humans were from a planet called Earth. They looked simple and weak, but they had something that scared the Void Hunters." "What was it?" asked Tay. "The texts don't say exactly, but they mention that humans were the only beings the Void Hunters ever feared." Jin stepped forward. "Commander, this is foolish. Humans, if they ever existed, have been gone for thousands of years. We should use our remaining power to send out more distress calls." The outpost shook again, harder this time. A warning light began to flash. "Outer shields at 8%, reported Engineer Du from his station. "They're attacking faster now." Tay closed his eyes for a moment. He had been commander of Outpost Eridus for 6 years. He had always been careful, always followed the rules. But rules wouldn't save them now. "What do you suggest, Lieutenant Sook?" he asked. Sook's eyes lit up. "The quantum resonator in the science lab. We could use it to try to reach across time and space." "To find a human?" Jin gasped. "The resonator is for research only. Using it like that would break every law of the Alliance." "We'll all be dead in 2 hours," Sook replied. "Alliance laws won't matter then." Tay studied the map again. The red dots were moving closer. "How would this even work?" he asked. Sook pulled out a small datapad. "I've been studying the old texts since we first heard about the Void Hunters. There's a specific frequency mentioned. If we tune the resonator to it, we might be able to make a connection to wherever humans now exist." "Might," Jin repeated, "based on stories and legends." "Do we have any better options?" asked Han quietly. No one spoke. They all knew the answer. Tay straightened his back. "Take me to the resonator." The science lab was cold and quiet. The quantum resonator sat in the center, a tall silver machine with rings that could spin around each other. It was meant to study particles from other dimensions, not to reach into them. "This will use almost all our remaining power," Jin warned as she reluctantly helped set up the machine. "If it doesn't work, we won't even have enough energy left to keep the lights on when they break through." "I understand the risk," said Tay. "Proceed." Sook connected her datapad to the resonator. "The frequency is very specific. According to the text, it matches something called human brain waves during something called REM sleep." "That makes no sense," Jin muttered. Very little about humans made sense according to the records, Suk replied. That's why they were so dangerous. The rings of the resonator began to spin slowly. A low hum filled the room. Power at 60% and dropping fast, reported Dew over the comm link. The rings spun faster. The hum grew louder. 50%. Lights flickered across the outpost. The emergency systems kicked in, directing power to the resonator. 40%. Outside, the Void Hunters sensed something happening. Their attacks increased. The outpost shook constantly now. 30%. Outer shields failing. The spinning rings began to glow with a blue light. The air in the center of the resonator rippled like water. 20%. It's not working, Jin said. We need to stop before— No! Suk shouted. Look. In the center of the rings, a small point of white light appeared. It grew slowly, pulsing like a heartbeat. 10% power remaining. The point of light expanded suddenly, filling the space between the rings. The room grew unbearably bright. Everyone covered their eyes. Power critical, 5%. A loud crack echoed through the lab. The light vanished. The resonator stopped, spinning. For a moment, there was only darkness and silence. Then the emergency lights came on, bathing everything in a dim red glow. Did it work? Tay asked, blinking to clear his vision. No one answered. They were all staring at the center of the resonator. Where there had been nothing before, someone now stood. It was a being of medium height with pale skin and dark hair. It wore strange blue clothes and white shoes. It looked around with wide, confused eyes. What the hell? The being said in a voice that sounded surprisingly normal. Where am I? Who are you people? Suk stepped forward, her hands shaking. Are you human? The being frowned. Last time, I checked, yeah. My name's Hyun. Was I just in my dorm room studying for finals? Because this doesn't look like my dorm room. Before anyone could answer, the outpost shook violently. A loud alarm began to wail. Commander! Han's voice came over the comm. The Void Hunters have broken through the outer shields. They'll be inside within minutes. Tay looked at the human, at Hyun, who appeared confused but not afraid. Not yet. Need your help, Tay said simply. We are about to die, and the old stories say that your kind is the only thing the Void Hunters ever feared. Hyun blinked several times. I have no idea what you're talking about, but it sounds like you're in trouble. What's a Void Hunter? As if in answer, a distant screeching sound echoed through the corridors. It was a sound no one at the outpost had heard before. The sound of Void Hunters inside their walls. The human's expression changed. Something flickered in those strange eyes. Something ancient and fierce that hadn't been there before. That doesn't sound friendly, Hyun said quietly. Tay felt a chill run down his spine. Maybe the old stories were true after all. Hyun looked around the dim red-lit lab. These people, or aliens Hyun supposed, looked scared. Their blue skin was pale, and their large eyes were wide with fear. The building kept shaking, and that horrible screeching sound was getting closer. I think you have the wrong person, Hyun said. I'm just a college student. I don't know anything about fighting. Officer Jin stepped forward. This was a mistake. We wasted our power on a legend. Commander Tay raised his hand for silence. We have no time to argue. We must get back to the command center. He looked at Hyun. Please come with us. Even if you can't help, you shouldn't die alone in this lab. The kindness in his voice surprised Hyun. Okay, lead the way. They hurried into the corridor. The emergency lights made everything look blood red. The screeching sounds echoed from several directions now. What exactly are these Void Hunters? Hyun asked, jogging beside Suk. They appeared a year ago, Suk explained. They attack without warning and kill everyone. They've destroyed 3-star systems already. What do they want? We don't know. They never communicate. They just kill. They turned a corner and saw the door to the command center ahead. Just as they reached it, a loud crash came from behind them. Part of the ceiling had collapsed. From the dark hole above, something dropped down. Hyun got the first clear look at a Void Hunter. It was tall and thin like a shadow standing up. It had too many arms, 6 or maybe 8, with long fingers ending in claws. Its face was smooth and black with no features except for 3 glowing red slits where eyes should be. Everyone froze. Even Commander Tay seemed unable to move. The Void Hunter looked at each of them. When its gaze landed on Hyun, it made a new sound, a high-pitched whine that hurt their ears. Then it moved, faster than Hyun thought possible. It leaped toward Lieutenant Suk, claws extended. Hyun didn't think. Something inside, something old and instinctive, took over. Hyun grabbed a broken metal pipe from the fallen ceiling and swung it hard, catching the Void Hunter in mid-jump. The creature flew sideways into the wall with a crack. It recovered quickly and turned toward Hyun, those red slits glowing brighter. "Get inside," Hyun said to the others, not taking his eyes off the Void Hunter. "Now!" Commander Tay snapped out of his shock. "Everyone, into the command center." The Void Hunter lunged at Hyun, moving in a blur. Hyun ducked under its claws and hit it again with the pipe. The creature screeched in pain. Jin pulled at Hyun's arm. "Come on!" They ran into the command center. The door closed behind them just as the Void Hunter slammed into it. Inside, the other crew members stared at Hyun with wide eyes and open mouths. You hit it," Engineer Do said in disbelief. "No one has ever hit a Void Hunter and lived." Hyun shrugged, breathing hard. "It was going to hurt your friend. I just reacted." Commander Tay studied Hyun with new interest. "How did you move so fast?" "Fast? I wasn't moving fast. That thing was fast. I was just, I don't know, running on adrenaline, I guess." "Adrenaline?" Jin asked. "What is that?" Hyun looked surprised. "It's a hormone. It kicks in when we're scared or in danger. Fight or flight response? Don't you have that?" The aliens looked at each other in confusion. "Our bodies don't change when we're in danger," Suk explained. "We feel fear, but it makes us freeze, not fight." Hyun frowned. "That seems like a design flaw." The door to the command center shuddered as something hit it hard from outside. "The door won't hold for long," Han said from his station. "And our sensors show at least 5 more Void Hunters inside the outpost now." Commander Tay turned to Hyun. "What else can humans do? The old stories say your kind made the Void Hunters retreat in fear." "I have no idea," Hyun replied honestly. "I'm just an ordinary human. I'm not special." Jin was scanning Hyun with a small device. Her eyes widened as she looked at the results. "Commander, the human's heart rate increased by 300% during the fight. Body temperature is up. Strange chemicals are flooding the bloodstream. That's normal for us when we're in danger," Hyun explained. "Normal?" Jin seemed shocked. "Your entire body chemistry changes to become more effective in combat? Automatically?" "Well, yeah. Doesn't everybody's?" The door shuddered again. A claw appeared through a small gap that had opened at the edge. "We need weapons," Hyun said. Du hurried to a cabinet and returned with several small devices that looked like guns. "These are pulse weapons. They stun most creatures, but they barely slow down Void Hunters." Hyun took one and examined it. "How does it work?" "Point and press here." Du showed him. "But like I said, they're not very effective against..." The door burst open. 3 Void Hunters stood in the doorway, their red eyes scanning the room. Everyone backed away. Hyun stepped forward. "Hey!" Hyun shouted. "Remember me?" The Void Hunters focused on Hyun. They made that strange whining sound again, but this time it seemed different, almost like a warning. Hyun raised the pulse weapon and fired. The blue beam hit the first Void Hunter in the center of its body. The creature staggered back but didn't fall. "See?" Du said. "They barely feel it." "Where does their brain seem to be?" Hyun asked, backing up as the Void Hunters advanced slowly. Jin looked confused. "Brain? We don't know their anatomy." "What part do you think controls them? Where would you aim?" Suk pointed to the glowing red slits. "Those seem important. They use them to see." Hyun nodded and fired again, aiming for the red slits on the middle Void Hunter. The beam struck true. The creature screeched and fell backward, crashing into the one behind it. "Nice shot," Commander Tay said. But the other two Void Hunters were still coming. Hyun fired again and again, hitting one in the eyes. It dropped to the floor, thrashing. The last one was too close now. It knocked the weapon from Hyun's hand and grabbed Hyun's throat with two of its many arms. Hyun struggled, gasping for air. The Void Hunter brought its face close, the red slit studying Hyun with what seemed like curiosity. Then Hyun did something that surprised everyone, including the Void Hunter. Hyun smiled. "You picked the wrong species to mess with," Hyun whispered. With a sudden burst of strength, Hyun broke free from the creature's grip and headbutted it right between its glowing eyes. The Void Hunter reeled back, making a new sound. Something, like a cry of pain. Hyun grabbed the fallen pulse weapon and fired one last time. The Void Hunter collapsed. The room fell silent except for Hyun's heavy breathing. Everyone stared in amazement. Hyun turned to the stunned aliens. "So, got any water? I'm really thirsty after that." Commander Tae found his voice first. You killed them. 3 Void Hunters." Hyun looked at the fallen creatures. "Are they dead? I was just trying to knock them out." "No one has ever defeated even one Void Hunter in combat," Tae said quietly. "No one." Han's voice broke the silence. "Commander, the Void Hunters outside. They're pulling back. Their ships are moving away from the outpost." "Show me," Tae ordered. The main screen lit up. The red dots that had surrounded them were indeed moving away. "They're sending signals to each other," Han reported. "I can't understand most of it, but they keep repeating one word over and over." "What word?" asked Suk. Han looked up, his face pale. "Human." The command center was quiet as everyone watched the screen. The red dots of the Void Hunter ships were still moving away from the outpost. "I don't understand," said Commander Tae. "Why would they retreat now? They had us trapped." Officer Jin was studying the readings from her scan of Hyun. "I think I might know why," she said. She turned to Hyun. "Would you mind if I run more tests? There's something different about your biology." Hyun shrugged. "Sure, as long as it doesn't involve needles. I hate needles." Jin led Hyun to a small medical area in the corner of the command center. She had Hyun sit on a flat table while she used various devices to take readings. "This is fascinating," she said after a few minutes. "Your body has elements that don't match anything in our database." "Like what?" asked Hyun. "Your muscles can generate almost 3 times the force that ours can, pound for pound. Your bones are denser. Your reaction time is faster. And these chemicals in your bloodstream?" She shook her head in wonder. "They seem to enhance everything even further when you're in danger." Commander Tae joined them. "Is this normal for humans?" "Yes," said Hyun. "I'm nothing special among my kind. If anything, I'm on the smaller side." This news seemed to shock them even more. "The old texts called humans Deathworlders," said Lieutenant Suk, who had been listening. "It means you evolved on a planet with high gravity, dangerous predators, and harsh conditions. Earth can be dangerous in some places," Hyun admitted, "but most of us live pretty safe lives now. We haven't had to fight for survival in a long time. And yet when danger appeared, you fought like a trained warrior," said Tae. Hyun looked embarrassed. "I've taken some self-defense classes, but mostly I just reacted. It felt natural." "Natural to fight instead of flee?" asked Jin. "Even against an unknown alien threat?" "Well, running wasn't really an option," said Hyun, "and I wasn't going to let it hurt your friend." The aliens exchanged looks that Hyun couldn't quite read. Han called from his station. "Commander, the Void Hunter ships are regrouping at the edge of our sensor range. I don't think they're leaving for good." Tae frowned. "They're probably calling for reinforcements." "Then we should use this time to escape," said Hyun. "Do you have any ships?" "One small transport ship," said Engineer Do, "but it's in Docking Bay 3 across the outpost. We'd have to get past any remaining Void Hunters to reach it." "How many of those pulse weapons do you have?" asked Hyun. 8 that still work," said Do. "And how many people are at this outpost?" 23, said Tae. "But some are injured from earlier attacks." Hyun thought for a moment. "If we aim for their eyes, those red slits, we can take them down. We just need to move quickly and stay together. You make it sound so simple, said Jin. It's not simple, said Hyun, but it's possible, and it's better than waiting here to die. Commander Tae studied Hyun's face. You really believe we can make it? I do, said Hyun, but we need to know more about these void hunters. How do they track us? What are their weaknesses? We know very little about them, admitted Tae. No one has survived long enough to study them properly. Well, we have 3 of them right here, said Hyun, pointing to the fallen void hunters on the floor. Let's find out what makes them tick. Jin looked hesitant. We can try, but our scanners have trouble with their biology. Their bodies seem to absorb most types of energy. Then we'll do it the old-fashioned way, said Hyun. Hyun picked up a piece of broken equipment with a sharp edge and approached the nearest void hunter. Let's see what's inside. The aliens watched with a mixture of horror and fascination as Hyun carefully cut into the void hunter's outer layer. It was like tough leather, but underneath was something strange. A network of thin tubes filled with a glowing green liquid. Interesting, said Hyun. They don't seem to have blood like we do. This green stuff must transport energy instead. Jin scanned the liquid. It's highly reactive, almost like a battery fluid. So they're powered by this stuff? Asked Suk. Seems that way, said Hyun. Which means... Hyun carefully punctured one of the tubes. The green liquid spilled out and the void hunter's body seemed to deflate slightly. If we can make them leak this fluid, they get weaker. That's valuable information, said Tae. What else can you find? Hyun continued exploring, with Jin scanning each new discovery. They found that the void hunters had no traditional organs, just different systems of tubes and chambers. The red eye slits connected to a central cluster of fibers that looked like a simplified brain. They're not like any life form we've ever studied, said Jin. They're almost manufactured. You mean like robots? Asked Hyun. Not exactly. More like engineered biological weapons. The outpost shook suddenly. A distant alarm began to sound. They're starting to attack again, said Han. But differently this time. They're targeting specific systems, not just blasting everything. They're getting smarter, said Tae. We need to move now while we still can. Hyun stood up. Based on what we've learned, I think I know how to fight them better. Those green tubes are their weak points, and they seem to track by heat and movement, based on these sensor organs here. So what's the plan? Asked Suk. We split into 2 groups, said Hyun. One group creates a distraction, lots of heat and movement in one direction. The other group moves quietly toward the docking bay. You want us to use people as bait? Asked Jin, sounding shocked. No, said Hyun firmly. We can create heat signatures without putting people at risk. Do you have any equipment that generates heat? Engines, power cells, anything like that? Engineer Du thought for a moment. The portable generators in storage. They run hot when active. We could set them up in the east wing and activate them remotely. Perfect, said Hyun, and we'll take the long route to the docking bay through the colder sections of the outpost. That should help mask our heat signatures. Commander Tae nodded slowly. It could work. Du, set up the generators. Han, download the outpost schematics to a portable device. Everyone else, gather whatever supplies you can carry. We leave in 10 minutes. As the aliens rushed to prepare, Suk approached Hyun. You came up with that plan very quickly, she said. Have you done this kind of thing before? Hyun smiled slightly. No, but I've played a lot of strategy games, and humans have always been good at finding ways to survive. The old text said that humans were the most adaptable species in the galaxy, said Suk. Now I see why. The outpost shook again, harder this time. They're breaking through the lower levels, reported Han. Sensors show at least 12 void. Hunters inside now. Time to go, said Commander Tae. Everyone ready? The group gathered at the command center door. They had the pulse weapons, some food and water, and medical supplies. Du had set up the generators in the east wing and held a remote activator. Once we're in position, activate the generators, Tae told him. Then we move quickly and quietly to the docking bay. Hyun stood at the front of the group, pulse weapon ready. Remember, aim for the eyes or the green tubes, and stay close together. Commander Tae looked at Hyun with a mix of hope and wonder. When we summoned you, we thought we were getting a legendary warrior. Instead, we got an ordinary human. And is that a disappointment? Asked Hyun. Tae shook his head. No, it's more amazing. If all humans are like you, I understand now why the Void Hunters fear your kind. Hyun took a deep breath. Let's hope they still do. Ready? Tae nodded. Ready. Hyun opened the door, and they stepped into the red-lit corridor, toward whatever waited in the shadows. The corridors of Outpost Eridus were dark and cold. Hyun led the group, moving quietly through the shadows. Behind him came Commander Tae, Lieutenant Suk, and the rest of the crew. They had chosen the longest route to the docking bay, through the maintenance tunnels where the temperature was lowest. How much further? Whispered Tae. Han checked the map on his device. 2 more sections, then we reached the main corridor to docking bay 3. They paused at a junction. Hyun peered around the corner, then pulled back quickly. 2 Void Hunters, Hyun whispered. They're standing guard. Can we go another way? Asked Jin. Han shook his head. This is the only path to the docking bay. Hyun thought for a moment. Do. Are the generators ready? Engineer Du nodded. Yes, 1 press and they'll activate. Good. When they turn on, the Void Hunters will likely move toward the heat source. That's when we move. Du pressed the activator. Somewhere in the east, wing, the generators hummed to life, creating a massive heat signature. They waited. 10 seconds passed, 20. Then they heard it, the strange screeching of the Void Hunters, followed by the sound of them moving away. Now, said Hyun. They rounded the corner and hurried down the corridor. The docking bay doors were ahead, large metal doors with a control panel beside them. Du, get those doors open, ordered Tae. Du rushed to the panel and began working. The others formed a protective circle, weapons ready. Something's wrong, said Han suddenly. He was looking at his device. The Void Hunters, they're coming back, all of them. The generators weren't enough of a distraction, said Hyun. They must have realized it was a trick. The doors are open, called Do. They hurried into the docking bay. Inside was a single ship, sleek and silver, about the size of a large bus. It looked old but well maintained. Everyone on board, said Tae. Do, start the engines. As they rushed toward the ship, the docking bay doors burst open. 5 Void Hunters entered, their red eyes glowing brightly in the dim light. Get to the ship, shouted Hyun. I'll hold them off. You can't fight 5 at once, said Suk. I don't need to beat them, said Hyun. I just need to slow them down. Hyun raised the pulse weapon and fired at the nearest Void Hunter, aiming for its eyes. The shot hit, and the creature stumbled back. But the others kept coming. Hyun backed up slowly, firing again and again. 2 more Void Hunters fell, but the last 2 were getting too close. Then Hyun had an idea. The green fluid, it's flammable. Hyun aimed at the fallen Void Hunters and fired at the green tubes visible through their damaged outer layers. The fluid began to leak out. Do you have anything that makes fire? Hyun shouted to the others. Engineer. Do through something small and silver. Emergency flare. Hyun caught it, activated it, and threw it at the puddle of green fluid. The result was immediate and spectacular. The fluid ignited with a bright blue flame that spread quickly to the other fallen Void Hunters. The 2 remaining Void Hunters stopped their advance. They made a new sound, a high-pitched wail that seemed almost like fear. Then they turned and fled. It worked, shouted Suk. They're afraid of fire. Everyone on the ship now, ordered Tae. They all boarded the transport ship. Du sat at the controls and started powering up the engines. How long until we can launch? Asked Tae. 2 minutes for full power, said Do. We may not have 2 minutes, said Han, looking at the docking bay doors. More Void Hunters were entering, 10, 15, too many to count. But something strange was happening. The Void Hunters weren't attacking. They were staying at the edges of the docking bay, keeping their distance from the ship. From Hyun. They're afraid, said Jin in wonder. They're actually afraid. The ship's engines hummed louder. 1 minute to launch, said Do. Suddenly, one of the Void Hunters stepped forward. It was larger than the others, with 4 glowing red slits instead of 3. It raised 2 of its many arms and made a strange gesture. I think it's trying to communicate, said Suk. Han was working at a console on the ship. I'm picking up a signal. It's different from their usual communications, more structured. Can you translate it? Asked Tai. Han shook his head. Not fully, but I'm getting certain words. Human. Stop. Death. They think we're going to kill them all, said Hyun. They're asking us to stop. The alien faces around Hyun showed shock. The Void Hunters have never tried to communicate before, said Tae. They've only killed. Why change now? Because now they have something to fear, said Hyun. Me, or rather humans. What should we do? Asked Tae. We can't trust them. They've destroyed entire worlds. Hyun thought for a moment. Let me try something. Before anyone could stop him, Hyun walked to the ship's ramp and stood at the top, in full view of the Void Hunters. The large one with 4 eyes stared at him. Hyun pointed at the Void Hunters, then made a pushing away motion. Then he pointed at the ship, then up, toward space. The message was clear. Let us leave, and we won't harm you. The large Void Hunter stood motionless for several long seconds. Then it stepped back and made a sweeping gesture with its arms. The other Void Hunters moved away from the docking bay doors, clearing a path. They're letting us go, said Jin in disbelief. Engines at full power, reported Du. We can launch. Everyone, strap in, ordered Tae. Hyun, get back inside. Hyun gave the Void Hunters one last look, then returned to the ship. The ramp closed behind him. The ship lifted off smoothly and flew out of the docking bay into the blackness of space. On the view screen, they could see the Void Hunter ships surrounding the outpost, but none of them moved to attack. They're really letting us go, said Suk. I can't believe it. Where to, Commander? Asked Don Tai, looked at the star map. Alliance. Station 7. It's the nearest safe port. As the ship accelerated away from the outpost, Han continued monitoring the Void Hunter communications. They're sending a message to all their ships, he reported. I can only make out parts of it, but it seems to be a warning. What does it say? Asked Tae. It keeps repeating 3 phrases. Humans return. Ancient enemy. And something that translates roughly as the apex predator. Everyone turned to look at Hyun, who was staring out at the stars with a thoughtful expression. Apex predator? Hyun repeated. That's what they call humans? It makes sense, said Jin. Your physical abilities, your adaptability, your strategic thinking, humans evolved as hunters. But we're not the strongest or fastest creatures even on Earth, said Hyun. Perhaps not, said Tae. But you have something that may be more dangerous. The ability to understand your enemy and turn their strengths into weaknesses. You studied the Void Hunters, found their vulnerabilities, and exploited them. In less than a day. Hyun smiled slightly. I guess humans are good at that. We've had a lot of practice. The old texts called humans the thinking predators, said Suk. Now I understand why the Void Hunters fear you so much. The ship entered hyperspace, leaving the Void Hunters and Outpost Eridus behind. But as they traveled toward safety, a new question formed in everyone's mind. If the Void Hunters knew about humans from ancient times, what had happened between their species before? And what would happen now that humans had returned to the stars? The journey to Alliance Station 7 took 3 days. During that time, Hyun learned more about the Galactic Alliance, while the aliens learned more about humans. So your planet still exists? Asked Jin. They were sitting in the ship's small, common area. The old text said humans disappeared thousands of years ago. Earth is definitely still there, said Hyun, with about 8 billion humans on it. 8 billion? Jin looked shocked. That's more than the combined population of 12 Alliance worlds. We reproduce quickly, Hyun said with a small smile. And we're stubborn about survival. Commander Tay joined them. The question is, how did you get here? The quantum resonator shouldn't have been able to pull you across dimensions. Hyun shrugged. I don't know. I was just studying in my dorm room when suddenly there was a bright light, and then I was standing in your lab. Perhaps the old stories are true, said Suk. They claimed humans once traveled between dimensions before they disappeared from our galaxy. We don't have that technology, said Hyun. At least not that I know of. The ship's comm system beeped. Commander, called Du from the bridge. We're approaching Alliance Station 7. They're hailing us. Tay stood up. I'll handle this. They're not going to believe our story. Alliance. Station 7 was much larger than Outpost Eridus. It was a massive spinning wheel in space, home to thousands of beings from dozens of worlds. The transport ship docked in one of the smaller bays. As predicted, the station's leaders were skeptical of their story. Void hunters let you escape? Asked Admiral Pan, a tall alien with green skin and 4 arms. That's impossible. They never leave survivors. It's true, Admiral, said Commander Tay. And we have proof. He nodded to Han, who played the recording from the ship's external cameras. It clearly showed the Void Hunters stepping aside to let them leave. Remarkable, said the Admiral. And you claim this is because of a human? All eyes turned to Hyun, who stood awkwardly at the back of the room. Not just any human, said Tay. The only human in our galaxy, summoned by a desperate gamble based on ancient texts. Admiral Pan studied Hyun closely. The old stories about humans. I always thought they were myths. They're real, said Jin. I've studied their biology. Humans have natural advantages that make them formidable opponents. And their minds are even more dangerous than their bodies. We need to report this to Alliance High Command immediately, said another official. If humans are the key to stopping the Void Hunters— I'm not a weapon, Hyun interrupted. I'm just a person who wants to go home. The room fell silent. Of course, said Admiral Pan after a moment. You didn't ask to be brought here. We will do everything in our power to help you return to your dimension. Thank you, said Hyun. But before that, I want to understand why the Void Hunters fear humans so much. There must be more to the story than what your old texts say. The Great Library on this station might have answers, suggested Suk. It contains records going back thousands of years. Then that's where we'll start, said Hyun. The Great Library was a vast chamber filled with glowing data crystals. Each crystal contained thousands of books, images, and recordings from throughout the galaxy's history. Jin and Suk helped Hyun search through the oldest sections. After hours of searching, they found something. Look at this, said Jin, holding up a small red crystal. It's a record from the first galaxy era, over 10,000 years ago. They placed the crystal in a reader. A hologram appeared, ancient, text that scrolled slowly in the air. I can't read this, said Hyun. I can, said Suk. It's High Ancient, the oldest written language in the galaxy. She studied the text. It's an account of the first contact between the old races and a species called Void-born. The Void Hunters, said Jin. Suk continued reading. The Void-born came from the Dark Nebula. They consumed everything in their path: energy, resources, even life itself. Many worlds fell to them. Just like now, said Hyun. Yes, but listen to this part. When all seemed lost, the Guardians arrived. They came from a blue world called Earth in ships that could bend space itself. The Guardians fought the Void-born and drove them back to the Dark Nebula. Guardians from Earth, Hyun repeated. They must mean humans. There's more, said Suk. The Guardians sealed the pathway between the Dark Nebula and our galaxy. They said they would watch over us but could not stay. Their nature was too different, too powerful for our reality. They returned to their dimension, promising to come if ever the Void-born returned. The three of them looked at each other. So humans fought the Void Hunters before, said Jin, and won, and then left this dimension entirely, added Hyun. But why? Perhaps the answer is there, said Sook, pointing to more text. The Guardians were not like other beings. They changed reality by their very presence. Worlds that hosted them, too, long began to transform. The Guardians said this was why they must leave, to protect us from themselves. That can't be right, said Hyun. Humans don't change reality. Perhaps not individually, said Jin thoughtfully. But maybe as a species over time. They were interrupted by an alarm. Red lights flashed throughout the station. What's happening? Asked Hyun. They rushed back to the command center. Admiral Pan was studying a large screen showing dozens of red dots approaching the station. Void Hunter ships, he said grimly. More than we've ever seen in one place. They'll be here within hours. They followed us, said Tae. They must have tracked our ship somehow. No, said Han, who was monitoring communications. They're not attacking, they're sending a message to the station. What message? Asked Admiral Pan. They're demanding we turn over the human to them, said Han. Or they will destroy the station. All eyes turned to Hyun again. They're afraid of what might happen if humans return to this dimension, said Jin. According to the ancient text, humans defeated them once before. And humans can supposedly change reality itself, added Sook. That would explain their fear. Hyun thought for a moment. Let me speak to them. Speak to the Void Hunters? Admiral Pan looked shocked. They've never communicated with anyone before. They tried to communicate with me at the outpost, said Hyun. Maybe they'll listen now. After some debate, they agreed. Hyun stood before a communication screen as Han established a link to the Void Hunter fleet. The screen flickered, then showed a dark figure, the largest Void Hunter they had seen, yet with 5 glowing red slits for eyes. I am human, said Hyun simply. Why do you fear me? The Void Hunter made strange sounds that Han's system translated into rough words. Human, destroyer, reality changer. I haven't destroyed anything, said Hyun. I only defended my friends when you attacked them. Humankind drove us to darkness. Sealed us away, changed worlds. That was thousands of years ago, said Hyun. I know nothing about that. I'm just one person who wants to go home. The Void Hunter was silent for a moment. Then, all humans dangerous. One or many. Same. Hyun took a deep breath. We don't have to be enemies. The old war is over. We can find peace. Another long silence, then. No peace with reality changers. Human must return to human place, or we destroy all. The screen went dark. Admiral Pan sighed. They won't listen to reason. No, said Hyun. But they gave us an option. They want me to return to human place, back to my dimension. Can we do that? Asked Tae. The quantum resonator was damaged when we used it to bring you here. Jin stepped forward. The resonator created a link between dimensions. That link might still exist, weakly, if we could amplify it somehow. The station has much more power than the outpost did, said Do, and better equipment. Then let's try, said Hyun. It's the only way to save the station. 3 hours later, Hyun stood inside a modified quantum resonator in one of the station's science labs. The Void Hunter fleet was now visible through the station's windows. Dark ships shaped like claws waiting. The link is still there, said Jin, working at the controls. Faint but detectable. We're amplifying it now. Will this really send me home? Asked Hyun. I believe so, said Jin. The resonator should follow the same path back. Commander Tae approached Hyun. Thank you for saving us. The Alliance will not forget what you've done. I didn't do much, said Hyun with a small smile. Just showed up and scared some aliens. You showed us that the old stories were true, said Sook. Humans really are the guardians of the galaxy. The resonator began to hum. The rings spun slowly around Hyun. The Void Hunters are signaling, reported Han. They've detected the resonator's energy. Will they attack? Asked Admiral Pan. No, said Han, sounding surprised. They're pulling back, giving us space. The ring spun faster. A blue light began to form around Hyun. "I'm sending a message with you," said Jin quickly. "Coordinates for our dimension, so humans can find us again if needed. I'll make sure it gets to the right people," promised Hyun, "though I'm not sure anyone will believe my story." The light grew brighter. The last thing Hyun saw was the aliens watching with a mixture of hope and wonder on their faces. Then there was a flash, and Hyun was gone. On the view screen, they watched as the Void Hunter fleet turned and departed, heading back to the darkness of deep space. "Will they return?" asked Admiral Pan. "Perhaps," said Tae. "But now we know their weakness." He looked at the empty resonator. "And perhaps someday, so will the rest of humanity."